This is the Cliff Yates Show. Personal growth, motivation, inspiration, and philosophies for a great life.
I got a great guest today. I'm really anxious to talk with him. You know, I love leadership and team building and how we can live a better life each and every day. So why don't we, he is the CEO of MagnaLeadership.com and another business. And we're going to let's bring him right on and find out what it's all about. Mr. Kevin Gazzara, thanks for joining me, brother.
Thanks, Cliff. It's so good to be here, and thanks for sharing me with your listeners.
Yeah, I really got into leadership many years ago in the LA Sheriff's Department. I got into team building, actually facilitating, and I actually worked with the PricewaterhouseCoopers consultants with the department on a court mandated training. So I'm interested because I know you're into coach consulting. Yeah, coach consulting. So you'll tell us all about that. Tell us about the business you have for coaching.
Well, let's see. I'll tell you a little bit about the Magna business because that's the primary business, and then I'll tell you about the secondary one. So I had spent 30 years in the corporate world, last 18 years at Intel, and the last 10 years there I managed Intel's management leadership development for the world. You know, we used to do 2,600 managers and leaders in 10 different countries each year, and it was a big job. I had a great staff, wonderful people. Used to take them off site for a week and do very similar kind of things, probably to what you had done with PricewaterhouseCoopers. And it was a fantastic place to learn and grow. But I had a personal goal, a 10-year plan when I was 40 that I wanted to retire at 50 and then go do what I was doing in the big corporate world for smaller organizations that didn't have $10 million
Right.
budgets. So I left the corporate world in 2007. I took two of my colleagues with me. We started up Magna Leadership Solutions. Every year has been better than the last. I get to work with great people, help small organizations. Typically 50 to 100 is probably the smaller ones. Most of the organizations we work with are in the hundreds, maybe less than 1,000. And we help them develop good leaders and really get an ROI on their investment. And that's what I've been doing with my partners, and it's been fantastic. And as you had mentioned earlier, I also do executive coaching. I have a separate site which is called coachsultants.com. Just launched that a couple months ago. And what I found through doing lots and lots of years of coaching is that a good portion of the people I get to work with really need a combination. They start out as hiring me as a coach and ultimately need the consulting piece, from what I've learned, developing and, training leaders, hundreds or thousands of them, throughout my career.
Yeah, I loved on your website how you had coaching, what the definition, what it means, or what you do with that, and what consultants actually do, and the combination of the two. I've never seen that before. I never saw coach consulting, but that really makes a lot of sense, right?
It does, and then I didn't realize it. I went and did all my ICF coaching certifications, and I got certified to teach positive intelligence. I've been doing that for the last 3 years. Excellent program, by the way, if anybody hasn't heard of that. And what I found was that we start as, doing the pure coaching, which is much more of questions answering, going deeper, really kind of figuring out what's going on so that they can move forward. But at a certain point in time, no matter how many questions you ask them, they still need some tools. And, having the advantage of spending 30 years in the corporate world, I've got a whole, a giant toolbox of things on dealing with conflict and prioritizations and engagement and all the kind of things that managers and leaders struggle with. And at that point, once we figured out what's going on internally with themselves, then it's time to start teaching them about the consulting piece and start teaching them about what's necessary for them to actually put the rubber the pedal to the metal.
Yeah, you got to implement what all those things to the corporation or your team or the corporate or the business. Do you do a lot with change? Do you have to deal with changing the culture of a business maybe or?
Yeah, primarily the main program that we run for Magna Leadership Solutions is what we call our Leading Forward Academy. It's a 6-month program, and it's designed specifically for culture change. I'd say 90% of the people, the organizations that come to us, then we do the 6 month program for them. We can do it live, in person. We've also, when COVID hit, we moved everything virtually, so we can do it virtual. We can split it up through the month. There's a lot of variation that you can use, but one of the things is most people come where they really need to get a culture change. They want to get this. They want to move a culture from command and control to more of a learning organization. And usually, what happens is uh, their turnover gets to the point where they can't, the incoming is not fast enough to meet the outgoing. And we work with a lot of tech companies. My background's in engineering. We work with a lot of tech companies, particularly manufacturing, because I spent a bunch of time there, and helping them. And one of the big challenges that we've seen, at least over the last 3 years, is that you can't find the people and you can't retain them.
Ah, yeah.
And usually when the retention, the turnover hits, we've had the last couple of companies that have been 30, 40%. It's just incredibly costly. It just disrupts the whole um, the whole flow of the organization.
Yeah.
So what we try to do is we do an analysis, and most of the time what you'll find out is um, the managers aren't leading in a way that people really want to work together. They're not properly resourced. They're not holding people accountable. Their communication sucks. So
Yeah.
there's lots and lots of stuff. So we're trying to change that culture to be much more of a kind of a servant leadership model and being
Yes.
inclusive than kind of, here's what you need to do and you ought to be just glad you have a freaking job.
Yeah. And, servant leadership, it's like, I think it was Maxwell who said, they wanted him to write a book on business leadership. He said, I won't do it because there's only leadership. And when you get into servant leadership, man, that you can put that into use at home and at work in all your relationships, right? It's really good stuff.
Yeah, it's, and real simple, because a lot of people think of servant leadership as kind of this mamby-pamby stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's all the touchy-feely. It is absolutely not.
Nope. Yeah.
There's so many good kind of studies that have been done that shows that you get real return on investment. And the servant leadership model, kind of at the heart, is the employee, right? The employee
Right.
is at the heart of servant leadership. And if you can focus on the employee, it doesn't mean you have to give them everything and you have to be, super nice and you walk on eggshells. It has nothing to do with that. It just means you develop trust, you develop respect, you properly resource them, you take input, um, you listen, you act, and the things that you can't act on, you say, I can't act on them. The things that you can, you do. You hold yourself accountable,
Yeah.
and you do it in conjunction with each other, as opposed to this kind of hierarchy of you do this and I do that.
Yeah. Oh man, that's really good stuff. Yeah. A lot of companies are way behind in that, right? Do you have any, this is for my own edification here, do you have any trouble with, or you get called in when these, I forgot what they call it, when, a company takes over another company and now that other
Acquisition,
company, yeah,
mergers
acquisitions.
and acquisitions.
Yeah, and now that other one company has to start, they have to adjust to a whole new culture of whatever the other company is, right?
Yeah, boy, and it's funny, like when we used to, when I worked at Intel, the one of they used to unaffectionately call it murders and accusations, right?
I like that. Murders and accusations. Yeah.
And if you read any of Edward Schein's work, Edward Schein is kind of the guru for change. He's out of MIT, and Ed, in fact, my boss studied with Ed. He got his
Oh, wow.
degree at MIT, and when I was at Intel, a guy by the name of Chris Richard, just a terrific boss. And if you read his book on culture change, he talks about what happens when you bring the mergers and acquisitions
Yeah.
together and how the dominant culture takes over. And I think he said the success rate's about 15%.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
low.
that's it. Very, very low. If you don't have similar cultures to what people value, where the values are
Wow.
very similar,
Yeah.
trying to put them together is very, very difficult. And typically, what happens is the more dominant culture wins out, right? And the other people leave or are let go, and it just kind of boosts up whatever the dominant culture is. Now, if the dominant culture is a servant leadership model, fantastic.
Yeah,
If it's
that's
the
right.
old command and control, then you're just adding, additional fuel to the fire.
Do you ever come to what maybe the ideal size of a team is, or a management team, or is there any study on that?
Yeah, yeah. Also, really good studies on that. When I was doing a lot of my doctoral research, I did a lot of looking at kind of team sizes and what keeps them motivated and engaged. An ideal size team, kind of a span of control, ideally is probably about 5 to 9.
Ah,
5 to 7
perfect.
is ideal size for a team. I mean, you can have certainly bigger teams, but the thing is you need middle managers in order to do that.
Yeah.
I've seen teams as large as a dozen that are pretty functional. Um, Usually, what happens is they've been working together before, so there's not a lot of trust development that you need to do. But when we go into an organization and we see that the manager has 20 direct reports, uh, that's the first red flag of
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
this is yeah,
Too
this is going to
much.
be a problem, right?
Yeah, we had a team up at unit when I worked for the LA Sheriff. We had a substation on the City Walk of, well, you know where Universal City Walk is,
Hmm.
in LA. And so we had a small team up there. Probably that was we were out of West Hollywood, but the substation probably had 10 permanently assigned
Yeah,
there. And we had a
yeah, good
great,
size, good size.
perfect, and we had a
Yeah.
great sergeant there who was an awesome leader. I didn't really realize it till later, all the things that he did to be a team builder, because he used to do kind of things off site, little river trips, river rafting, and things that he was building.
Hmm.
But I remember that, and it probably goes to what you would probably teach also. We had a deputy who wasn't really fitting into the culture of the substation. Everybody wanted to get rid of this guy. Like, hey, you got to get this guy out of here. He's not fitting in. And his view was, well, there's a place for this guy. And the guy he was a photographer off duty. And so he ended up getting that guy a job in technical services. So instead of, which he loved, and that was a great fit, and he flourished. But, he didn't want to throw that guy out, right? He goes, no, there's a place for that guy. I'm going to help him. If I can help him get him over here. And he really took an investment in that person, right? That's really good leadership, right?
Absolutely. When we find, when we go in and help organizations, we can talk a little bit about this in the podcast here about kind of how do you balance the different task types so you get people into the zone.
Yeah, into the zone. We
One of
wanted to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that you find is that well, first of all, the good news is everybody has a different mixture of kind of what you like to do. And if
Yeah.
you can figure out the types of things that you like to do, and then you can look at what you've got, typically we found that most organizations have the right people. What they haven't done is they haven't done a good job of giving them the right kind of task. And that's a great example,
Ah,
right? That,
right.
hey, here's a good person. He doesn't fit the type of tasks that he likes to do that really keep him motivated and engaged are not kind of what we need to do.
Yeah.
But there is a ton of need for that in the organization. Let's find where he fits best. And I would guess that moving him over is probably incredibly motivating for him.
Yep.
And my guess is he probably stayed, right?
He
He stayed
stayed right there.
motivated.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
And that was and his passion. He was now getting paid for what he liked to do in his own time, right? So he was taking pictures
yeah,
and photography and all those things. And he was kind of
a
an
win-win.
analytical guy. And so it was a win-win. Yeah. And we were going to talk about why don't we get right into that as far as they do some assessment testing, right? Is that on leaders or on your team members, or how would the assessment work that you do?
Yeah, so the assessment that we're talking about is one called the task quotient or TQ. And it's something that I developed when I did all my doctoral research, kind of over 20 years ago. That I was working at Intel. I had a great staff. I was working at that time I was managing the HR graduate rotation program. So I had probably 20 people. Um, the interesting thing there is I've already broken my rule here. Like you shouldn't have more than 20. It's 20 people, but you place them in the
Right.
organization.
Yeah.
Basically, I was responsible. I didn't have them directly reporting to me. They had to reporting to a manager. And with the graduate rotation program, what I was noticing is that we would hire very similar people, similar behavioral styles, similar values. Um, and I'd walk into the first cubicle and the first person would say, "Boy, I love working on task A and B, but I hate C." And the next one person would be is, "I love working on B and C, but I hate A." And the third one would be, "I love working on C, but I hate working on A and B." And it just was really curious to me of like very similar styles, similar backgrounds, all had master's degrees, and I just couldn't figure it out. And then one day I was working with one of the consultants we had, a guy by the name of Bill Daniels from American Training and Consulting. And what Bill had done is he had recognized through his research, and I'll do a plug for his book called Breakthrough Performance.
Oh,
Excellent,
okay.
excellent book by William Daniels of American Training and Consulting. And Bill essentially became a mentor of mine. And what he found was is there were really three types of tasks that we do. We do routine tasks. Email is a great example, right, of
Yeah.
a routine task. You have to. It comes in on a regular basis, and you have to get it out, right? So
Right.
so you have to kind of in and out, right? So it's highly predictable, right, and it needs to be handled
Yeah.
instantly. The second type of task you do um, is troubleshooting or problem solving tasks, and those are unpredictable. But in the same breath, you have to get them out, right? You can't wait and say, okay, particularly if you're a firefighter, right? You can't say, okay, well, come back. I'll put you on my schedule to put the house out,
Right. Yeah.
out of
Right.
fire next week. And then the third type of task you do is what he calls project work, highly predictable, low delay tolerance, or sorry, high delay tolerance, meaning that you don't have to do it instantaneously. Doing your
Ah, okay.
taxes is like
Yeah.
a really really good example, right? That it's you put a lot of pieces together, and when it's done, it's a different level of feedback than when you've deleted 10 emails from your or you found one service problem in your
Yeah.
troubleshooting. So the way what I found was when I asked Bill, I said, "Have you ever done any research to figure out?" Because my suspicion is that all of us, there are 496 different mixtures that you could have of what your preference is for routine troubleshooting and project tasks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
said, "Have you ever done that research?" Because my suspicion is that I think there's something to it. And that was my hypothesis. I presented it to my doctoral committee, my chair, and he said, "Yeah, you can go and do that, but you have to develop an assessment." So I had to develop an assessment to figure that out, which is what I did. And we found out statistically, because it was a quantitative study, that each one of us has one of these mixtures. And if I can give you, even if you're doing crappy tasks, and for example, say you're 50% project, 30% troubleshooting, and 20% routine, if I can give you that type of mixture, even with stuff you dreadfully hate, I can raise your level of satisfaction. Now, if I can give it to you with stuff that you love, that's even better.
Yeah.
But we were able to prove that it's just by, you know, for example, we work a lot with call centers, and the problem with call centers is everything is segmented. First part of the call center is all routine. It's like push this button, push this button, push this button, read the
Yeah.
script, and you do that for 10 hours. Turnover is horrendous. Second level of the call center is all troubleshooting. I'm like, couldn't figure it out in level one. Here, you guys go figure it out. So they're doing all 100% troubleshooting. In the third level, which is kind of developing the systems and putting the projects in place and how do we make this better, it's all project work.
Yeah.
And, and when the call center people will come to us, we work with a huge call center up in North Phoenix. Um, their turnover was 37%. And when we went in and looked at it, they were segmented, and we said, "Hey, you've got the right people here. You just need to figure out, let's, rather than restructuring the organization, let's rebalance the tasks of the job. So you don't have level 1, 2, and 3. You have a customer support person, right? And they do a little bit of each. So they do a couple hours. They had a routine. They had a high degree of routine. They'll do 4 hours of routine, right? If they have a high degree of troubleshooting, they really like that. Solve the problems. You'll give them a few more hours. If they had a low project need where they're doing a lot of strategic things, you give them a lower percentage. And so you don't redesign the organization. You basically rebalance the tasks and get two advantages.
Okay.
One, people are going to be happier.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing, probably the two biggest things, are that the first thing is that you get all this cross training that happens. So when someone's out in level 1, normally you can't pull from level 2 or 3. Now, since there's all one level where people can be mixed and matched as needed,
Yeah.
it's just incredible of what can be done. And then the other thing that happens is, the cross communication that happens because you're now working with each other. So the level 2 people are helping level 1 people are helping level 3, and they're working back and forth. So it's so if you and by the way, there's relatively no cost to do this, right? So you just have to do it. Just have to be a little innovative.
So does every job? So would you say that every job has these three things, right? A routine, troubleshooting, and a project aspect to them?
Absolutely, yeah. So the first thing that we do is we go in and benchmark the job, right? So we use a whole suite of assessments, but one of them is the task quotient, because we use a lot of behavioral assessments. It tells you what you like to do. We use some values assessments that tell you kind of what drives you kind of under the surface. And then we use the task quotient. What that will do is the first two will give you the right people. If you create an environment with a good balance, it'll tell you whether they're going to stay or not. Because many organizations do the first two great. They get the right people in, and then voila, they're throwing them in, and they're doing 100% routine work. It's like, and they're leaving. It's like, we don't know what's going on here. We hired the right people. Great behavior styles, good values, good connection. But if you throw them in an environment like that, it just kills everything off. And then once we found the right people, we'd say, hey, here are the people that are good fits. And by the way, in the current environment like it is, where everything is separated, none of them are going to stay. You have to create a little bit of a balance.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So we said, hey, particularly when you have hundreds of people, you can't do it all at once. So let's take a team, that have level 1, 2, and 3. Let's put them together as a team, right? We'll bring the new people in, and we'll create the benchmark around a certain balance of the different types.
Yes.
And let's see how that works. And guess how that works?
Great.
It works fantastic. Everybody loves working with each other. They get a nice balance. People stay. We were able to get the turnover to go from 37 to 7. We couldn't get it to 0, but that's okay. I don't think you want it to 0.
You don't want it to 0 because something's wrong, probably. Yeah.
But getting 30% of the turnover improved was outrageously valuable to them. And of course, the CEO came back and said, "Okay, I get it. This works. Okay, let's start expanding it."
I can see where that would be kind of applicable to, like, in the police field. I'm thinking like a deputy would be. So he does his routine things of getting, before he goes to patrol, he does his routine as far as searching the car, he gets his shotgun ready, he preps the car. It's a routine that he's going to do every day in patrol. Then when he goes out, and you don't know what calls are coming in, so that's going to be your troubleshooting. And then you're going to have to write your reports. It's probably going to be a project-based thing. I mean, you could do that the next day, or you can get approval to do it later. So it kind of applies there.
Or it might be some community involvement where they're doing Big Brothers and Big Sisters. That's more of a project kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
As long as they've got that kind of balance, generally you find people stay.
Yeah. So I couldn't handle, and I never wanted to go to the detective bureau, right? Because when I'm a deputy and working patrol, when I'm done for the day, I'm done for the day. When I come back the next day, I start anew. So then when you're a detective, you always got 20 cases hanging over your head and you're balancing calls. And so that would be like project overload, right? Or
Well, that's probably more of a combination of troubleshooting because your brain's constantly,
yeah, I
trying to
couldn't handle
solve a
that.
problem and project work, right? So it's those combinations and
Yeah,
not a whole lot of routine kind of work.
no. Although, I don't know, it just seems like they were always overwhelmed and the case wasn't over. It was like things keep going. I got these hanging over me. I never liked that. So I liked starting the day with a new slate. Even though it was unpredictable, it was still the work from yesterday is complete, and now I'm
Right.
starting from anew. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not only understanding your task balance, but it's understanding what we call your cadence, right? Like,
yeah,
so for example, for cadence for me, I can do project work for about 2 hours, right? If I'm designing something new or working
yes,
on something, about 2 hours, and then I get little red flags going off in my head, like I want to get up and take a walk or do some
yeah,
email or pick up the phone or go get something to drink. That's a key that you need to change your task type. Typically, what would happen if people don't understand that is they'll go do a different task, but it's the same type, and
right,
and at the end of the day, they feel exhausted. If you could, once you know your cadence, mine is 2 hours for project. I do about 90 minutes for troubleshooting, and about 30 minutes to 45 minutes of routine is kind of what I handle. And I break my day up. I block my day. It's like I know Monday
oh,
mornings are always going to be troubleshooting. It's just like everything is going to hit the fan. Somebody needs something. Reports aren't done. This isn't set up. So I know that's going to happen. So I don't schedule any. I don't plan on any other troubleshooting. And then the afternoons are project work or doing podcasts or whatever.
wow. So I love that. I'm going to start. So you can apply this in any area of your life, right?
Yeah, and in fact, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Cliff. The last one of the last groups, the leadership groups that we had put through here, we did about 50 people for this manufacturing site. When we looked at this person's individual task quotient, his job was incredibly unaligned, with what he was needing. And when we interviewed him, because he was basically super happy, like I love my job, I don't want to do anything different. So I'm thinking, well, what's going on? Well, what we found was he was a single dad, and he had a high need for troubleshooting, and he wasn't getting it work. But he said, as soon as I walk through that door, dealing with the kids and doing everything on my own and all the stuff that's broken in the house, he said, pretty much all my troubleshooting needs gets hit, right? So as you had said, looking at your life holistically
Yeah,
is a big advantage of doing that. And it's not that, hey, this assessment is wrong. It's quite often, many of us in extreme situations may have particular needs. And sometimes people have extra jobs, right? They have a second job,
yeah,
and maybe that second job is 100% routine, or maybe you're just doing tax audits or something. And it's more of
yeah.
a project kind of thing. So looking at it holistically is ideal. Um, but typically, I would say most of the people that we run into have a relatively balanced after work. Maybe not 100%, but it's not usually just one type of activity.
So do you teach this to the supervisors or the team leaders or whatever, or do the employees get this kind of
Yeah,
training too? Yeah,
yeah. So what we do is we teach it at a management level of how to use it.
yeah.
We make the assessment available for them,
Oh,
and
good.
we tell them, have your employees take this,
Yeah,
right? Have them do it. We ask them, have your employees track their work, for a week. Usually 5-day period is a good amount of time.
yeah,
Um, and then have them put the work that they're doing in different categories and see if there's a balance. Um, the interesting thing, I did this with an IT organization, about 18 people, and the manager had come to me and said, we're have a higher turnover and people just aren't happy. So I said, to have them take this assessment, right?
yeah.
And there's the assessment that I'm going to give away will give your ideal.
Thank you.
There's an
Yeah.
advanced assessment that does multiple different views. I said, have them take the advanced assessment that says what's your ideal and what's your actual. And what it did was I gave them the list of 1 to 18. I said, here's the people that are going to leave first, and here's the people that are not. And I said, tell
Yeah.
me how I did. And he
Wow.
said, that's amazing. Now, he said, oh, I don't know about here. Charlie and Bill, I think 6 and 7, I think they could be switched. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But if you look at the aggregates and, the quarters and
Yeah.
thirds, it's like, yeah, man, those are the people that I'm worried about. I don't want to lose them.
Yeah. That's
And it's
yeah.
because, yeah, they were so out of whack, right? They, the great troubleshooters were doing, 40% or 50% routine work.
Yeah. Wow. That's good because you invest a lot of employees and you don't want to lose them. Yeah. Well, I can really see the benefits of this, man. I'm just always applying how it worked with the LA Sheriff's Department and stuff, but man, I can just see where it even applies to me at home now when I'm doing certain even when I'm doing podcasting, right? I do routine setting up the lights, the camera, things. I like doing that, putting your name in and, arranging that. But then I like the filming. And then, I've
Right.
recently thought about going live more often because I like having the stress of being live. But then I also like the editing portion too. But I notice if I go too heavy on 2-3 hours of editing, then I'm getting a little bit frazzled. So I can kind of self-evaluate, right?
Yeah, because you're doing the same type of tasks. Like you wouldn't want to do podcasts 8 to 5,
Right.
Just like this, because it's all the same. It's all the same type of task. Now, doing it for 1 or 2 hours and then taking a break, maybe taking care of all the emails that you have to do, or
Yeah.
doing all of the setup, right? And maybe there's a bigger project that you want to work on. And
Yeah.
I say when I do an example, I just remember like when I was in college. I'd say Friday, I'm locking myself in the dorm room, going to get that report written, going to not do nothing. And I just
Yeah.
remember like get up Friday morning, 8 o'clock, everything's all set. And after about, an hour and a half, I'm off going, finding, I need to go get a soda or
Yeah.
something to eat, or, go talk to the guy in the next dorm room, and what I didn't realize was that, that that I was just trying to do the same task for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once I broke it up, excuse me, so I got that percentage throughout the day, the total percentage. At the end of the day, you'll feel exhausted. The difference is you'll want to come back and do it again.
I like that because, man, they should do that training. As a supervisor with the sheriff's department, you might find yourself, hey, man, at the end of the month here, I got 20 evaluations due. You know what? Friday, you know what? I'm gonna sit down and do these 20 evaluations. But you now you can be more realistic with yourself. I can't do that because after every couple hours, I need to take maybe a half an hour break. So
Right.
maybe I probably can get to 5, and so you can realistically schedule yourself, right?
Yes, right. And if you do that,
You won't be so
most
miserable, right? You'll want the next month. You'll have a kind of a system to do
right.
that.
Yeah. Getting the system in place, and sticking to the system, because things are going to come up, right?
Yeah,
Um, and
that's
what
right.
I tell a lot of people, this might be interesting to your listeners, Cliff, is that what I find is, for people, when I do this with a big group, like the last group we did of 50, I said, how many of you are procrastinators, right? And probably about a third of the room hands went up right away, and
Yeah,
then there's about another third that's kind of like, I'm not sure. I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at and seeing if you're getting enough. How many of you, I said, keep your hands up. How many of you are not getting enough troubleshooting work? And pretty much just about all the hands stayed up. And I said, here's what you do. You're self-medicating. What you do is you take a routine task, just like you described with the reports, um, and you wait to the last minute. That
yeah,
report takes an hour to do,
yep,
and you give yourself 45 minutes, and all of a sudden you've turned that routine task into a problem-solving task, and you rush through it in 45 minutes, and you feel really good about that.
yeah.
And it's an indication, like if you are procrastinating, it usually means that you've got a little bit too much routine, and you need a little bit more
Ah, yeah,
troubleshooting.
yeah. Oh, so it's almost like you put a little, I don't know what you would call it. So it's like put a timer on yourself. It creates a little bit of a under the gun. I don't know. You create, yeah,
Yeah,
create a
yeah. And
troubleshooting thing. Yeah,
once you take the report, once you take the assessment, it'll tell you.
yeah,
Like for me, my troubleshooting is about 30%. And if I'm not getting, an 8-hour day, um, I'm not getting 30%, you know, 2.5, 3 hours or so. Then I feel kind of unsatisfied by the end of it. I want to go out. I want to go fix something on the car. Like,
yeah,
I asked my wife, like, we need the screens fixed. And I know that screen
yeah.
fell off in the back of the house or something, but you're generally looking for that. And that's an indication that you're not getting it in the other work that you're doing.
Boy, just knowing this whole, it makes you reflect on what you're doing and how you're doing it. I like it. So, man, I want to be respectful of your time here. Where can we send people to? Maybe even you coach individuals too, though, right? In this, or?
I do. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So we do coach consulting, right? So coaching and consulting. If you go to coachsultants.com, you can see the different programs we have. And I'm most of the time I'd say I coach, first line to senior managers.
Yeah.
You generally don't work too much with individual contributors. Not that I can't, but I'd say probably majority of my time is spent there. I've been doing that for many years. It's very rewarding. A lot of the work we do with the leadership programs, we do the coaching as part of the Leading Forward Academy. So a lot of the business that comes out of that.
All right. So they can go to magnaleadership.com or coachsulting.com, either and or.
Coachsultants.
Coachsultants. Oh,
.com. Yeah.
Oh,
I think there is a coachsulting.com.
Coach Sultans. All right. Keep it to Coach Sultans, because Kevin Gazzara seems to me to be a guru of leadership and team building. I'll tell you what, it's so invaluable when I know as a sergeant, when I got some leadership training and, man, servant leadership training, it makes the big difference in your job. You start to enjoy, initially there's a lot of overwhelm when you have people out there doing things that you're going to be ultimately responsible for, and it can create panic. But if you're leading a team, and you're trusting your people at the same time holding them accountable, right? Along with yourself, it can make your job just fulfilling, right?
It is, yeah. I always believe that there's a job for all of us that's going to keep us happy, motivated, and engaged, get us into that zone, into flow, and this is just one of many tools that can help you do that. And the nice thing is it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. Just pay a little bit of attention to how you block your time.
That's right.
In fact, I just did an article on Medium on time blocking and using Pomodoro methods that use some of these concepts as well.
I was going to talk about the Pomodoro method. People use that. I write some books, and writers use that quite frequently. They have a hard stop and they get up, and it's like, is it every 20, 25 minutes or some concept?
Yeah, 25 minutes. And what I found is this is really kind of putting the task quotient and Pomodoro method together is really kind of the supercharging methods.
Yeah.
That, one thing I would say, breaking things up into little blocks works really well.
Yes.
What I would tell people is if you're in the zone and the Pomodoro timer goes off at 25 minutes, keep working till the point where you're ready to get out. Don't force yourself
to stop.
Stick exactly to that. And then the other thing about the Pomodoro method is it doesn't take into account the task types. So you could go from project to project to project to project,
right?
And you're still not going to feel. You're going to feel significantly different if you go from routine to troubleshooting to project, routine troubleshooting to project.
Ah, okay. So there's a cadence to going through each one. Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
Love it. Kevin, thank you so much. Please hang around for a little post debriefing. And man, I love all your stuff. I'm going to be going there myself, and I'm going to send my people there, because anytime you can take anything to make yourself a better leader or team builder, supervisor, man, it's just going to make your life that much better, not only at work, but at home. So Kevin, hang out, and
Cliff,
you know what?
You're going to give them the assessment, right?
I'm going to give them the assessment. I have the link.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You're going to put that in there so they can take the assessment. My gift to everyone. So
Thank you
there's
so
no
much for
cost
doing
for
that
it.
for my people. Kevin did that for us free of charge. Take advantage of it because it can help you. Absolutely. Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Thanks, Cliff.